we make sure that our partners' product offerings, content offerings fit into the content. Very interesting because of this journey.
That was academic. I need to click on the links.
To click on the links?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Lakshman.
Oops.
Tourist in China didn't work the way we had on perspective 8 to 9 to where they, and we road transport. We had televisions, and that is simply not affordable. You can't take a 10 to $12 million investment and then spend $10 million on media. It's not a practical alternative. But that is that approach. We also approach. Dollars more issue a selling the in the we would reach extremely, we could target the demographic, and more importantly, we would reduce our dependence on the traditional tour operator business, which, although necessary, was very constricting. It would also, for us, from a P&L point of view, it would also reduce the traditional cost of distribution, because it would take away commissions, it would take away deposits, all the discount structures. It would bring us directly, whatever we gave, we were able to, the channel would give us directly with the customer. And we would be able to spend have a far greater impact with a much lower budget than we would have had we used the traditional media. We also decided that it would be a medium by which we could place this directly in front of the customer so that we would create more of a pull, a customer pull, rather than a traditional push. And so we thought we would rely on things like reviews. In terms of, to do all of this, we set out to do some things beforehand. We have a fairly versatile website, which you can book from any part of the world. We spend a lot of time and energy putting digital offers in terms of special offers on the site. We have reasonably decent social media presence in terms of all. Facebook is very traditional, hardly used by many of our customers, but YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, where people can post directly, are extremely common. We also use the online content of a lot of the traditional media, and that we use by getting people to write about us and traveling on the service. So we've got exposure in the online content of things like the New York Times, the FT, and a lot of Indian newspapers and so on. And we use a lot of travel bloggers. Now, this being as a genre didn't even exist 2 years ago. But today, independent travel bloggers are a huge force. Many of these people have over 100,000 followers, and they're constantly tweeting. We had these guys on the plane, and one of them actually made a movie and posted it while he was on the plane. And he had 130,000 followers. And we've been fortunate, we've been able to get hold of a whole lot of these guys, and the exposure is tremendous. We also use the websites of a lot of traditional channel partners. Sri Lanka Tourism, we have a widget on the site. We use Sri Lankan Airlines, we are a code share, we have them as a code share partner. We actually spend on promoting their website. We work with hotel partners and have special offers on their site and promote those ourselves. And we spend a lot of money managing our reputation online, where we encourage people to try and talk about their experiences, because this is particularly important because Sri Lanka is such a glorious canvas from there. 4,000 feet up and looking down, you see a country that none of us experience unless you have done that. And people are really keen to talk about what they see up there. We also like to work, we are trying hard to work with OTAs and other travel portals, but there's a lot of pushback on that again, because many of them don't sell domestic aviation products, and some of those that do don't sell aviation products. So that's still work in progress. Just going on to what we learned halfway through, one of the things that really was essential was that we had to invest. If we were going to use this effectively, we had to invest in it up front. And to do that, we did spend a fair bit of capital up front. We invested in a world-class online booking system, a back-end reservation system. This is it's used by low-cost carriers around the world, and it can handle up to 3 million passengers a year in a single instance, and we used it for an airline with 24 seats. We run our finances on SAP. That was more or less a legacy, but we have the advantage of running SAP across all AR, AP, and the full finances. We have a satellite. We subscribe to SkyWeb, which is a satellite tracking and locational device. We know at any time where our aircraft is to within 50 meters, and that is visible, and we can use that to also show our customers. We have a state-of-the-art safety management system. These are back-end, the customers don't see it, but the aviation industry is one of the most regulated in the world, and therefore we are required to have, so we opted for digital rather than manual systems, likewise for aircraft maintenance. Oops, daisy. We also invested in, we realized very soon that the traditional IT executive or manager is not good enough. We do need guys who are specialists. We realized that leadership, incentivizing leadership and commitment from the top is critical. We had to allocate meaningful funds to the spend in terms of digital marketing. We had to review often because earlier on we spent a lot of money on pushing the product only in the Western European and Chinese markets, only to realize that the pickup was greater here in Sri Lanka because people found out about the product after they came here. So we experimented often. We also realized that we couldn't employ all the people we needed in terms of the skill sets. So we had to rely on outside service providers, which we did frequently and often. Going on, just to conclude, we had some very early results. We struggled in the first year, but as you will see from the numbers here, on all metrics, we grew quite significantly in the second year and are continuing at the same or a greater rate of growth. So for us, it's a very practical application. Unlike what Shiyanta said, we do judge this entirely by the cost, by the return, by the cost of conversion, and how much cheaper we can do it, and more efficiently we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ramesh. Can I now please invite the much-awaited Google speaker, Khurram. Thanks. And technical expert, obviously.
So that was Microsoft PowerPoint running on Apple. But a computer owned by a Googler, that's probably why all the troubles actually happen. Hello, everybody. So my name is Khurram, and I am here to speak to you about taking the consumer journey and giving them the best possible example, and how you combine that on the profit-making side. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what you care about the most. I think it segues really well from where you ended your presentation. So, the biggest problem that we face when we work with digital marketing teams of a lot of the people that are here in this conference is that we hear that you get a lot of pressure from the C-suite about what is kind of the cost per order or cost per booking that we get, and that's something that's really drilled in, and there's a lot of stress and tension related to it, and this is what we call kind of a cost-based approach to online. And what's happening now is that search marketers are actually, a lot of them are moving towards a new kind of structure where they're rethinking digital advertising basics such as KPIs and budgets and customer journeys, and moving to what we call a profit-based approach. So what do I mean by that? Well, first thing is to understand what the customers are doing online, right? So online interactions, I mean, if you think about your own experience, it's really demand-oriented most of the time. It's a means to an end. It's the chopsticks to your food. It's a step in the right direction, and what that really means is that the brand loyalty that you may have offline may not necessarily exist because you have a lot more information, a lot more data, and you're quick on the feet. To exemplify this, we actually working with, we cover emerging markets. So one of the markets, which we didn't have permission to share which market, we were looking at the classifieds players. So the example in Sri Lanka would be Ikman and HitAds and a few others. So, we looked at the amount that their brand was being searched for online. And in this market, the market leader actually had about 5x search share compared to number 2 and number 3, right? Which would be great by itself. But when you actually looked at what customers were doing, about 32% of the customers in the same session we're searching both for the leader and one of the number 2 and number 3, right? So this is a perfect exemplification of the fact that that brand loyalty that might exist offline is now being taken away in the online space. And what that calls for then is a more flexible and demand-oriented budget planning. So to give you an example, this is going to work now. So the top line that you see, the yellow line, is basically queries, which means people searching for a product that a couple of players in the market are advertising for. And the second line, the red line, is basically the leader who's basically tracking the interest in whatever they provide. And the third one is someone who's not got as big a share online, and they have budgets that are basically independent of whatever's happening online. What does that result in? For example, in June, they're missing out at about 60% of interest in something that they have to offer, right? So the question then is, I mean, if you're looking to maximize revenue and you're looking to maximize profit, how do you move away from that? How do you really be there when you need to be? And that's basically the fundamental shift in mindset that we're talking about. And I'd like to point out 3 things that marketers can start and companies can start doing to move in this direction. Measure beyond the conversion, bid for profit, not efficiency, and capture demand in the moment. Let me talk a little bit about the first one of these. So when we deal with clients here in Sri Lanka, for example, what we generally hear is that we would want to get to a cost per acquisition of X dollars. So let's say the short-term conversion value of 10 cents. That's their target, and that's what they're driving towards. And they don't really look at customers that would come at a different cost. But what we'd encourage you to do is actually think about all the other aspects that come into play when you actually convert a customer online. You're going to have an increase in market share that's going to drive brand equity. The branding itself, the exclusivity that they're now on your website, they're in your database, and now you can have a longer dance with them to get them to come back and become loyal customers, and the pricing power that would give you. So that when you take these aspects into account, actually your full customer value is much greater than what you're paying for one click or one conversion through the online channel, be it whatever channel online. Airbnb is someone who actually used this model with us, and it resulted in about a doubling of the customers that they were getting through Google. But that's just one angle that you can actually use. Another one that you can actually think of is, think of the people that come to your website and how you can actually differentiate between them. So there may be some users that actually spend a long time to actually convert, but when they do, the revenue they bring in is fantastic. There may be others that are coming multiple times a day, searching multiple times a day, and you have interactions with them, but they convert quickly after that, but they don't give you as much revenue or profit. Now, wouldn't it be fantastic if you could actually segregate these two and have a different conversation with them and spend different amounts on them? Well, since everybody here, practically everyone, has analytics on their back end online, or it may be Google Analytics or some other program, you can actually do this very easily. And we actually had a client here in Sri Lanka that recently basically applied the segmentation of customers by viewing the customer journey. And as a result, they actually managed to double the number of leads that they got overall. And if you actually look at just online, they actually quadrupled it, the number of leads that they were getting from digital. And so just imagine, like, not just the revenue potential of this, but at the same time, imagine on the other side, the customer experience, where you're having a more relevant, engaging conversation than just one standard conversation across everyone. BCG recently did a study of a similar segmentation technique, and they actually looked at what we call view-throughs as a KPI for optimization. When we say view-throughs, we're talking about people that are going to a website, they're seeing your ad, but they're not clicking on it. And all they did was they actually targeted these people separately with specific messaging, and they actually managed to reduce their cost per conversion by 50%. Now, if you think about this logically, initially it doesn't make a lot of sense because these are people that didn't click on your ad. But then if you think of top of mind recall, which is a metric that's used a lot offline, we believe that was one of the conclusions that, that's what's driving this increased interaction after interacting with a banner ad. Again, regardless of which channel you're using, Facebook or Google or something else. So that's what we mean when we're talking about measuring beyond conversion. The second point, bidding for profit, not efficiency. So if I told you that 2 digital marketing agencies came to you and offered you a cost per order of $12 versus $16, which one would you pick? Which is better? I'm sure you already know this is a trick question, because in this case, actually, the $16 cost per order is better. The idea here is that it's not just the cost per order that matters, it's the amount of volume that cost point drives. And what we see again and again is companies getting just hung up on what their cost per acquisition or cost per order is and not trying basically different types of values to see what kind of volumes they drive. And again, all of this is available on your analytics backend. You can actually change the KPI that you're driving towards up and down a little bit and then see what kind of volumes they drive, what revenue they drive, and what profit they drive. So in this case, actually at $16 a booking, you get enough incremental volume that you're actually making more profit as a whole. So at the end of the day, what's more important, profit or your cost per order? So if you do that, you move away from this cost per lead or cost per acquisition model that, I'm just going to get the ones that are on 10 cent and see what point actually maximizes your profit. So the fundamental change in thought process is going from controlling cost to maximizing profit. And so the answer to this question is we actually don't have enough information. And then finally, the third piece about capturing demand in the moment. So what we found again and again is that user behavior is actually pretty independent of the level of competition that you see online. So what you see here is actually the number of ads that are showing up for travel or tourism in Sri Lanka over the last few years. And what's interesting is that the number of ads are actually going down, whereas search volumes are actually going up. And clicks on these ads are also going up. So the demand is there. People are competing in this place, but a lot of advertisers are choosing not to be in this space for whatever reason. And this is, I guess, the argument that you'd make to your C-level, that we were just not there at the moment we were closed. So how do you move away from this? And the idea here is that you need to have a more flexible, demand-oriented budget. What that means is that you look at what the demand is expected and you plan. Certainly, that's very, very important. And you distribute your budget. You look at seasonality. But at the same time, you keep tracking any changes in user behavior. And any increase in searches should be responded to by moving around the budget. And the idea here is that whenever someone is interested in you, you are there to interact with them. So, in summary, our view on this is that it's really, really important now to move from being cost-oriented to profit-driven. So, I don't say that you really should be definitely doing digital marketing. What I believe is you should try, and you should see that if your profits as a whole grow, how much more can you invest to keep growing those profits? Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? How much your total profit pool is. Who cares about what one user costs? What matters is your total profits. So whether it's only organic or plus marketing, you want to only invest on the organic side to really try to get better search results from organic. You want to try the digital angle from a marketing perspective. Or you want to use offline. What you really need to be looking at is how, as a whole, you're driving profit. So second thing, it's really, really key to own traffic. This is something that we don't see enough of, especially going back to the core searches. I mean, if someone is 1/3 of the time searching for you and your competitor, can you risk not being there when they search for you? And obviously, if you're the first result on that keyword, then fantastic. You're still going to be at least visible to them, if not on top. But if you're not, then is that something you want to risk? And also, if you're not there when they search, it's not like people are going to wait around. I mean, we all know how we interact in the online space nowadays. Nobody really wants to wait. They're going to make their decision there and then and move on. And finally, it's there's this opportunity here by segmenting the data that you already have on your website to really influence user behavior and traffic efficiency. What we're not saying is go after everybody that comes to your website and just remarket like crazy to them. It's about understanding who gives you more value and going after them in a targeted manner. So in the interest of you actually taking away something from this presentation, I actually put together a few questions that I would recommend that you ask your digital team. So if you want to note these down, feel free to. And if you're the digital marketing team, you might want to note these down and prepare your answers. First question is, are the current KPIs that you're using inhibiting the team's ability to maximize profits? Are we too focused on a cost per booking or the total amount that we spend online to really maximize the profit that you're trying to drive? Right? Especially if you have inventory left over, this is a question that you must ask yourself. Second is, who should internally know about and help manage the total, the total profits driven by digital marketing? Is it just the digital marketing team that should care? Should your overall head of marketing be involved in this to understand what a good mix is? Should it be someone else that's looking into it? It's very, very important to get all the right stakeholders internally. And then, excuse me, how can this actually help more accurately allocate your budgets going forward? Are we actually putting the same amount of rigor into other marketing channels as we always do with digital? Do we really know what the ROI is there? Can we switch up things to see what happens if we're using more of a different channel and less of a traditional channel? And then also a point that was mentioned earlier, what are the technology partners and staff that we need to be able to get to where we want to get and optimize for profit? So the back end is really, really important. Your digital marketing partners, the agency that you use, very, very key. And your internal team, equally important. So it's really important to make sure you have all of these things in place to really drive things forward. So that's it for me. Just very quickly, one last thing. So for the last, I think, year or so, Google in Sri Lanka has had about a gigantic 6'1" sized hole when Rohan actually chose to pursue more exciting ventures. I don't think there can be anything more exciting than Google, but feel free to defer. So we finally filled that hole partially. He's not 6'1", but I just put up his email address here. Jagan Rajendram's joined us, so feel free to reach out to him if you have any questions going forward. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Khurram. Thank you very much. I think that's the end of our presentation. There we go.
Today, tomorrow, and into the future. Sampath Bank, we present your future.
It's Sing a Mega, big experience.
Sing a Mega, the big experience. The fastest growing mobile 4G LTE network in Sri Lanka. Mobitel, we care, always. Vijay Newspapers, helping shape opinions.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, those were 3 great presentations. So speakers, thank you very much for that. I'm going to in the essence of time, jump straight into the questions, and let's hopefully debate some of these things amongst ourselves as well. But Siantha, I just want to try and point this to you first. It was very interesting. You talked a lot about analytics being key in targeting the clients and the whole client experience. Can you just maybe enlighten us a little bit more on how, this is so much analytics out there. You've got to slice and dice, you've got the whole lot that you've got to do. What are some of the salient areas that you guys kind of...
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned in my presentation, the key thing is to really slice and dice it, because, big data is probably the most overused word these days. And how we looked at it was, start small, start with the ecosystem you have. Start by understanding incrementally as you have a new customer, a new set of customers who come onto your platform. Try and understand them, try and profile them, try and do some A/B testing, see what works, see what doesn't work, build that up incrementally. It's also important that you need to have a really good platform now. I mean, we do a lot with Google Analytics and all of that as well. I think it's important that you've got a mix of both. I think it's important that you've got a strong platform of your own that fits the business objectives in terms of where you want to grow and where. So for instance, we operate on Oracle ATG, which has advanced personalization features, and that sort of feeds into the analytics piece. So if you understand your customer better, you understand your customers' behavior better online, but you need a proper engagement medium. You need to have a platform that can actually deliver content that results in execution and thereby higher ROI. And we try and be coherent about this, whether we are sort of doing it within our own ecosystem or actually extending it to Google. We do a lot of work with Google and Facebook. Yes, I mean, it's important to slice and dice. It's important to incrementally understand your customer segment groups. It's important to start actually with really understanding what your objective is out of data analytics. What do you want to achieve? I think the point mentioned was excellent. I mean, is it about ROI? Is it about traffic? Sometimes these objectives are conflicting. And for us, it's very clearly an ROI perspective. We want to maximize our ROI. So I think sometimes, because you've got a confluence of different factors, a confluence of different objectives, especially when you're in a startup stage, you want to capture the market. Sometimes it's all about eyeballs. Sometimes it's all about what the guy next to you is doing in terms of gaining market share. Sometimes you find people selling below cost to gain market share. So there's a lot of distraction out there. And I think when you're using analytics, when you're trying to engage your customer, it's all about being focused, understanding what you exactly want to do, having a coherent strategy and sticking to it.
Yep. I mean, making sure as well those clients keep coming back to you as well. That's important. This is not one-time wonders that you're going out there, right? So you've got to use those analytics in a clear, structured, focused way. Brilliant. David, I'm just going to... Jim, keep calling you David, sorry. We renamed Jim there back in the room. Sorry about that, Jim. You've got a lot of experience in the US working with LeapSet and customer engagement, with digital there. And now you've been coming back here for a few years and experiencing the evolution of that happening in Sri Lanka. Any insights that you can give us as to how that's evolving, and are we off track, on track? I mean, obviously Google and guys are playing here, so we've got them advising and helping companies here. But
sure. I mean, it's always a moving target. I think that in the US and Europe and Asia, the consumer kind of digital experience is always changing from week to week, month to month. And I've been coming to Sri Lanka for, I think, almost 9 years now. And every time I come, it almost feels like I'm visiting a new country because of all the changes and all the improvements. A lot of the things that I think that we're starting to work on in the US are things that are maybe not as mature here in Sri Lanka from a consumer experience. Definitely in the mobile space, not just app solutions for the customer, but actually giving them a responsive design that will work on whatever kind of form factor they're using to engage with the merchant. In our business at LeapSet, we live in both the online and the offline world, which presents a bunch of unique challenges for us. traditionally in the online world, we're transacting, doing online orders and fulfillment in that matter. A lot of what we're working on now are that through line between the online experience and the offline experience when you're actually in situ in that restaurant. And that's something that I think that now that we've launched into Sri Lanka, it'll be a nice place for us to test, to figure out how do we give the consumer in Sri Lanka in that hospitality environment that mobile-friendly experience, draw that through line from discovery in the online experience all the way through to the actual physical in situ presence in the restaurant, figuring out how do we link the virtual identity when they're actually in the restaurant to that virtual identity or that transactional identity. And then finally, for us, and I think for Sri Lanka as a whole, is figuring out when you draw that through line of that consumer experience is how do you manage the payment. In the US, we have a bunch of different options, which is a good and a bad thing for both consumers and operators. But it feels like here that a lot of that is a little bit still to be developed and understood.
Thank you. Ramesh, I'm going to jump to you. You talk about, obviously, your business, taking an old traditional type of business and then transforming it now using digital, which is great. Congratulations on that. How do you, your target market, obviously, is everyone that's coming into Sri Lanka, and you've got to offer this service to them. And you touched on some of those areas, but the strategy going forward, because we are opening up as a tourist destination now, a preferred tourist destination. How can you give us some clarity on how you're going to now target a lot of these? Because obviously the next thing that will happen is there's going to be competition as well, but right now you guys are there, the first move advantage. Any ways of enlightening us on some of that? Don't give us any trade secrets.
No, actually, some competition would help because then there'll be more people talking about.
Start one. So.
Talking about the product. But the issue is exactly as you said, there are 1.5 million tourists who come to Sri Lanka. I think we can safely assume that at least 20% of them can afford to spend $150 more on their holiday, which gives us a target market of possibly 300,000 people. Last year we carried 3,000 people, and this year with luck we'll carry 8,000. Now and we don't have a hope in hell of reaching that 300,000 people other than through using the type of digital channels that we're trying to use. So for us, there's no choice. We cannot go out there and advertise. We cannot depend on someone else to sing our song for us. We've got to do it, and the only way we can do it is using all these tools at our disposal and relying on expertise that we can't necessarily afford to buy. So it is, our big bet is entirely on getting the word out there.
But is there a mix here? Do you still have to leverage the old traditional guys, maybe in some level of partnership, whilst you've got your digital strategy moving forward? You can't discount that those guys, most of those tour operators are still gathering a lot of those numbers coming in, right? So is this a combined strategy?
Most definitely, because the bread and butter will be what comes from the traditional brochured tourist who we think, Udana would be better placed to give us a number, but possibly 50% of those coming to Sri Lanka are what we call organized visitor traffic, and we have to go after that by using the traditional channel. We can't we can't rely only on digital, but our growth has to be pegged to this because those are finite channels. The people who sell Sri Lanka are the people who sell Sri Lanka. It's the airlines that operate here, it's the tour operators who operate here, and the people who feature holidays to Sri Lanka. But our market is really everyone who's coming here, and there's no way on earth we can hope to reach them other than through going after them directly.
But how do you take it a little bit forward? We're talking about enhancing the client's experience, the digital experience. Now, it's just not purely making sure your service is known by these clients, but how do you enhance this now going forward to make sure, whether it's getting the likes of Udana's organization backing you guys, but the experience for this guy to go and say, wow, that was a brilliant experience. No, wow, wow, wow. Was it, you know, how does that happen?
Again, I think a lot of iteration. We have to, we keep experimenting. We have, you know, Khurram touched on something that we hadn't thought about. We are spending money, for instance, on remarketing. And we are not, you know, we never think about the guys who don't click on the ad. Is there something that we should be doing there? We never, you know, we have a huge funnel, which just, and our conversion is abysmal. What is it that we need to do with these guys? And I don't know the answers, very honestly. So for us, it's a question of learning. And we have a CIO in the form of Ramesh, who's extremely switched on, and who insists on, you know, if he has it his way, it'll be all 90% digital marketing and no regular marketing at all. So we do get a lot of, and we are seeing, I think what's exciting about the Cinnamon example is that we are seeing real life progress in a very short space of time. So that gives us the confidence, and we are nowhere near making money, trust me. So it's a black hole at the moment, but we can see the returns come, that the potential lies in pushing this, because it is also the least cost acquisition.
Thanks, Ramesh. Udana, tourism is on everyone's mind in Sri Lanka now. You know, it's a key driving force for our economy. Can you just enlighten us a little bit about what we're doing in the digital space, just enhancing the clients now to experience Sri Lanka?
Thank you, Manju. Before I touch upon that, I want to basically give some information about what is happening in terms of tourism space in Sri Lanka. It's, this year we are planning to achieve about 1.75 million target and annual growth of about 19%. And we can see that traditional dominated, two-operator dominated market is being dominated now somewhat by online travel agents, OTAs. And also there's a lot of interest from millennial travelers, people who are born after 1981. There's an interest, if you look at even the search traffic, the demographics, there's a big portion where people are searching to come to Sri Lanka. So if you look at Sri Lankan traditional tourism, it's mostly over 30s we were targeting, but there's a new trend where a lot of youngsters looking at Sri Lanka as well. And also there are some phenomenal cases where some of the properties getting 90% of their revenue through direct bookings through the web. So there's in terms of a lot of things happening online, and there's a big role for us to play in this market. So as Sri Lanka Tourism, we are working with partners, and we are also looking forward to have a proper strategy because we've been working with a few partners, but we are now looking at having a very stringent strategy for next 3 years to increase the destination visibility compared to other competing destinations.
And you know, just since we've got both of you in similar segments as Ramesh, I mean, what kind of areas do you see that, you know, Tourism Sri Lanka can play in helping, again, enhance that client's experience for services like what Ramesh offers? I mean, how, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but, you know, what do you think that, you know, we should be doing for organizations like Ramesh's now that is also critical to move these numbers up and keep enhancing it? What is Sri Lankan tourism looking at doing for those people?
Because if you look at, if you take our site, the National Travel Portal, people come there, or travelers, potential travelers to the country, they'll come there to gather at the very initial phase. So they want to find out what is available in Sri Lanka, the products. So where products like Ramesh, domestic travel, so that that discovery, product discovery can happen there, as well as we want to encourage people to basically have a more visibility, because if you look at Sri Lanka, there is an informal sector as well, where people who have not registered with the tourist board still operating in terms of hotels and restaurants. But if you look at the formal sector, they get traffic at the initial stage, because people come and discover their products and services via the travel portals like Sri Lanka Tourism. So we want to encourage, and if you look at our destination, we are competing regionally with countries like Maldives, Malaysia, Thailand, and also globally in terms of our products like wildlife with Kenya and beaches with other countries. So there is always a potential where we use digital technologies to make our destination visible, so that we bring traffic to the country.
Okay, thanks for that, Dana. And Rohan, I'm also going to bring you into this discussion. I think we should try and, I'm just going to, Karam, you talk about ROI, and we all, ultimately that's the holy grail for all of us, I mean, but when you take Sri Lanka, predominantly the business models have been built on taking cost as, and I presume everywhere else as well, and cost is still important, right? Cost is still a very important factor. And you cannot ignore it as an organization. But yet, when you presented, you said, you picked profitability, but that's a key component of being able to reach that profitability. Can you elaborate a little bit more? And then I want Rohan also, I know because he's in the digital marketing space, maybe both of you can add some value here.
Hello. Thank you. Certainly. So absolutely. I mean, cost is half the formula for profit, right? So it's certainly important. I guess, for me, the first step that you have to take in that direction is kind of move away from the last click mentality that most digital advertisers have, and to just kind of give you an example of what last click is. It is basically giving all the credit of someone converting to the last time someone interacts with you. To use a cricket analogy, it's like Sri Lanka chasing 250, Sangakkara scoring 100, Jayawardena scoring a 50, both getting out, Thisara Pereira scoring a single and getting all the credit for the victory. So it really, I mean, it doesn't make sense if you're really looking at a profit model, right? So what you really need to do is, even when you're looking at cost, you start looking at it in terms of the entire interaction with your customers, not just the last one. And there are a lot of products out there to build attribution models and see, if they've interacted with you 5 times, giving equal weightage to it for that, for the conversion to that. There are other models, and you can then see what are the different ways to assess the revenue that they've brought in, right? And once you start doing that, you can look at the cost and the revenue differential and figure out where your profit is going. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's important to get, cost is important, but you also have to look at the other side of the equation, I guess. And if you're managing to look at both over time, then you're going to move in the direction where, as a whole, your profit's going to keep growing.
So I think I had a funny situation with a client. He basically, we were doing digital marketing for them, and they were spending lots and lots of money on offline. No objection on that, but they were spending peanuts with digital. And then we asked them, why don't you increase it? Because you obviously have a massive ROI on digital. It only makes sense for you to increase. Then the answer was, no, we'll just stick to it. And when you asked me, like, why are you spending still so much money? Well, that's the way it should be. what do you mean that's the way it should be? You should still spend so much money on it even when it's not working. Because they would have spent 250,000 on a half a page advertisement and got 5 conversions, whereas for 20,000 rupees, they get what? A conversion. So there's, I mean, it's all ROI just made sense, but spending increase on digital is always a bit of an issue. So I think people need to be and will always be sensitive about ROI, and I'm never going to talk against it. But I think there is, as Khurram said, there has to be multiple ways of looking at it. What Khurram said is something we call it multi-channel attribution. You need to look at it, and that's beautifully shown in Google Analytics, where you can see, he used a cricket analogy. I will take the soccer analogy, where it's like you're spending all your money on the striker, but you forget the defenders and the midfielders who pass the ball to him. So those are some of the things that you need to think about. But it's also important that we don't get lost in this digital conversation, and user experience is the topic of the theme, where online is not only digital. Online could be your biggest part, but digital is a much more bigger ecosystem. So some of the case studies around how the retail experience can get translated, how mobile experience, there is conversations even in Sri Lanka on mobile platforms that can identify whether you have been buying milk every month for the last 3 months, but you missed this month's milk, and can you give like a discount on this month's milk? I mean, those are digital opportunities and capabilities that are very real right now. And I think enhancing the user experience is that. And this is also where, beyond advertising and marketing we are talking about, I think this content, the power of content to enhance the user experience essentially go. And if you just talk about online, you only have 7 seconds. 7 seconds to make that impression, to make it matter. So content, I think, is a very important strategy of increasing your user experience online.
Brilliant. I think, Sianta, yeah.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, I mean, I think it's important to, when you look at the cost per acquisition, I think it's important also to look at it in the context of where the industry is in its life cycle of adoption. Now, we've seen that, let's say, in e-commerce, where obviously the early entrants into the space bear the cost of education. So as the adoption rates increase, you've got the cost per acquisition coming down, which is why, in a nascent industry, in a growing industry, sometimes competition is welcome, because the burden of education is not just on one player, it's shared among many players, and especially in an industry like e-commerce, for instance, or any other digital service industry that we have. I mean, I think that is a very, very important. So I mean, if you take online, I mean, if you take us, we advertise in traditional media. We advertised a lot in traditional media initially because honestly, the viewership was there. If you take 4 years ago, so we needed to educate the customer. We needed to have mediums where we could educate the customer, get them online. Once they are online, we actually do a lot more through digital. So if you look at the spend, our spend on digital, I mean, it's sort of gradually grown as the adoption rates in the industry have grown. And I think that's important for, I mean, we've got other industries like OTAs, various other services now coming up, and I would argue that they would go through the same cycle of growth. I mean, so your cost curve tends to come down as there are more adopters coming, there are more repeat buyers, and you spend incrementally less on acquiring the next customer. You obviously spend a lot less on the repeat customer. So I think it's important to look at it, especially in Sri Lanka, since a lot of these industries are at very, very early stages of their life cycle.
Yeah, I mean, most companies that would be in your space as well, Sianta, for example, in the online space, I mean, they wouldn't have, I don't mean this in, you've got the backing of Dialog and Axiata, but then some of the smaller guys would be looking at cost in a very critical way. I mean, yours is fastest to market. How do you, maximize that? But some of those smaller guys will be really analyzing their costs before they actually decide on digital. So I just wanted to try and figure out, how, yes, please. How,
So, just to add to that, I think when you're talking about the little guys, I mean, digital makes more sense than anything else.
Yeah.
Because you can test things, and you can fail very quickly. So whether you're using Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Google, you don't need to set up a budget of $1,000+ even. You can start very, very small, as long as you have people with the right skill set. You can make it happen. I think the issue that we face with most smaller players is they don't do their due diligence in terms of understanding what is the best way to optimize, what's the importance of the messaging, in relation to the customer experience. And because they don't do that, they don't get the returns on digital, and then they blame it on the platform, be it Facebook or Google or whatever else. So I think that's key, that again, if you want to test, absolutely test with a small budget, but get the right human capital to make sure that you're doing everything on your part to give users the customer journey to succeed yourself, and let the user enjoy the experience as well.
Okay. And I see one very interesting question here. That's just, and I do want to elaborate on it. I love it. Udana, yes, please. I saw the smile come on. I said, fantastic. I want to know you, whoever you are. But Udana, could you please address that? Do you mean digital marketing for Sri Lanka is just having a website? Someone obviously thinks that tourism in Sri Lanka is not doing enough.
No,
Please,
actually, it's, if you look at the strategy, we'll cover SEO, that means search engine optimization, search engine marketing, and display, as well as a social aspect of it. And also, we will look at integrations into traditional channels as well. So it will be a comprehensive strategy. If you look at from a tourism point of view, to capture these millennial travelers, a new breed of travelers, basically their main, how to get their attention is via digital channels. So therefore, we will not do away with totally, we can't forget the traditional ways of tourism marketing, but it will be an integrated approach into looking at all these other SEM, SEO, as well as social media, because it contributes a lot to destination marketing.
Thank you. Just want to bring Ramesh in. Ramesh, you talked about traditional business and how you've transformed it, right? I'm going to ignore that question because it's too bloody personal. But
I was wondering whether my daughter was in the audience, actually.
There's a bunch of rude fellows out there, honestly. I think there's a point there, though, which I do like, the fact that digital has no age barrier. So can you probably elaborate? Because, they need to hear this, I think,
Yeah, I don't take any offense at all at the question, because when you have 3 teenagers at home, analog age is being polite. I'm prehistoric, I'm ancient, I'm gross, I'm everything, and certainly not digital. But I read sometime digitally somewhere a few years ago, someone said, I think it was someone at Google or Microsoft or something, said that, if you want to know what the next best commercialized digital application is going to be, check on what your 10-year-old kid is doing, or check on what your teenager is doing. And it's so incredible, because you have, today Snapchat, Wimbledon finals were on Snapchat. And my kids were talking about Snapchat and using it 3 years ago. So yeah, I think, if we don't change, we will die. There is no, irrespective of how old or how young we are. And it's sometimes amusing that my colleagues, whom I am younger than, by the way, think, take pride in saying, I don't have an Instagram account, or, I don't understand how to do this, or I don't have a Facebook account. I don't think it has got anything to do with relating to your business, or if you want to have a life at home, and if you don't know what these things mean, you're dead. So business really is, if that is the case at home, then it's a no-brainer that it has to happen for business. I have one comment on, with respect to the cost aspect, though. I think, companies like Google are being very clever, to say the least. And we spend possibly 85–90% of our digital advertising spend through Google. But because of the sheer buying power of some of these OTAs, like the Agodas and the Booking.com and whatever it is, for a startup, now we may have shareholders behind us who have money, but that doesn't mean that they're going to keep doling out cash to somebody who's not making money, irrespective of whether they have it or not. And in some instances, we have found that digital advertising is prohibitive, simply because now our best value proposition is the flight to the East Coast, because you're talking of 40 minutes against 9 hours on the road to Pasikuda. Pasikuda has 900 rooms, 95% of which are empty. But you can't buy, I can't use, I can't push Cinnamon Air or Sri Lankan Air taxi using the word Pasikuda, because Agoda pays $3 or $5 for that word. And so it is of no value. I've got to find I've got to pay a writer to be clever about, writing something to bring Pasikuda in. That'll push, my flights to Pasikuda up in the rankings. So I think that's something you need to think about, because, you can outthink yourself sometimes. And, while obviously profit is important, costs ultimately are the driver of profit. And people who forget that, my first boss used to say, it's very, look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves.
Sorry, I just want to add something. I think 5-6 years ago, doing digital marketing at a level of as a startup, and I think it's to this date, it's valid that it is actually a good entry point. But if you really want to take it to the next level, I think it's very important to realize that it can be a costly affair. I don't think it's fair to say that digital is cheap. I think it's still very cheaper than going above the line and stuff like that. But if you really want to compete, because there are, just like you, thousands and thousands who have come in. We have like so many advertisers. 3 years ago, we didn't see in the market that are now advertising. If you ever try to compete for a keyword in Google, such as hotels, it is expensive because you're competing with Agodas and the Booking, and they have so much more money than you. So I think it's also important for everyone here to understand the game itself has shifted. Sometimes just going in thinking, oh, it's very cost effective, is probably can be misleading to you, and you might find out probably the hard way that it kind of caught up with your bottom line. So just be cautious on that. That's what I just wanted to say.
Yeah, please go for it.
Just to add to that, I think that's a really good point by both of you. What I think is important also is to be nimble when you're in this space. I think the example of travel is really relevant, that yes, search is very, very competitive, Google search in particular. But it's one of many channels that you have online. So I think what's key now is, like, to give you an example, the Google Display Network it partners with about 90% of websites. And through that, we can, you could potentially target, and I believe Cinnamon Air does this very well. You can target people who are interested in travel, for example, and you have the entire inventory of pretty much the entire internet to target. So suddenly, the cost factor becomes much less prohibitive. So I think it's also important to build your options. Understand the priorities of those options and the costs related to it, and then kind of go down them in order depending on the kind of volumes you want and your ability to go after a bigger profit pie. So search is usually one of the cheap ones. In some areas like travel, yes, it's expensive. Remarketing is something that works really, really well. And in travel in particular, dynamic remarketing is something that does really well. So you could just have that order of Facebook and search and display on the Google network and YouTube for video, and test everything out, figure out what's the cheapest for you, and then over time keep testing and failing or succeeding, hopefully a little bit, and keep going down that route.
Because ultimately, guys, all of us, whether large or small startup, the customer, right, through digital, doesn't actually see the force, the size of it, right? It becomes the experience they encounter on this little device, a screen, or on their computer or their mobile phone. So just, rounding up the discussion here. I was just wondering, from your individual perspectives, if you can just add a minute or two. How, you know, so your audience now is every consumer out there, right? Because you've got access to these consumers or clients through their devices. Bang for your buck, I don't know, you know. So maybe just some insights to that.
I think something I mentioned in my presentation as well, I think something that needs to be made sort of, when you think about digital marketing, when you think about engaging your customer, ROI, all of that, we've got to really keep in mind that mobile is going to be critical in the next 5 years, 5, 6 years, a lot more critical than it was the last 4 years. I mean, how you develop your mobile experience, and obviously Google, Facebook, you know, all the big networks are ahead of the curve on that. But I think it's very important as a startup business, if you're in the online domain, how a customer is going to view your website, how a customer is going to interact with your website is going to change significantly over the next couple of years. It's not just mobile, it's also cross-device experiences, okay? And how, now there's a lot of talk about, you know, cross-device personalization, you know. How do you, you know, as you know, people shift more and more to mobile, and like I said, we've seen that we've got, this month we have 40% of our traffic was from mobile devices. I mean, how do you think about pivoting your business model, working with people like Google and Facebook in actually making sure that your experience is, stays true to what you want it to be? Because the experience on a mobile, the experience on an app is very, very different from a website. There are a lot of native features you can do on an app. There's a different type of engagement you can do, and as people start viewing you from different sets of devices, I think that's something a lot of people who are online right now should be focused on, so much to the extent that, you know, digital advertising, a lot of it, you know, a lot of people are talking about in terms of mobile advertising right now. You know, so I think that's, you know, a key point that anyone in this space needs to be cognizant of, thinking about the future.
I think I can only endorse what Shayanta said. I think, you know, people from a customer experience point of view, I don't know how many of you have tried booking an airline ticket on a phone. It's a pain, you know, and that is despite companies like Emirates and Expedia investing lots and lots of time and effort on it. But for whatever we sell or whatever our engagement with customers is going to be, in my view, within the next 5 years, exactly as you said, 80 to 90% on mobile. Whether it is a purchase, whether it is an endorsement, whether it is an experience, whatever it is, it's going to happen off your phone. And I think we should be spending a lot more of our time and effort developing, moving towards that than traditional sort of websites and online other forms.
Thank you. So I think two things for me. You know, I firmly believe, and this is a personal opinion, that you will enhance customer value into customer experience if you optimize yourself. As long as you're constantly looking at, you know, what's working best for you and improving that experience, the customer experience will improve. So for mobile, you fix your website, you're going to get much more, a much higher conversion rate, you know, better bookings, better turnaround, and the customer experience will also improve as a byproduct. So I think the part to giving your customers the best experience is to fixing yourself and optimizing yourself to the best of your ability. And second, I think you really need to be testing out all the different channels that you have available to you. I saw a question about email marketing and, you know, comparing offline and online. Everything needs to be tested. We have clients for whom email marketing works better than anything, which means that customers like that experience the best. And for offline, there are ways to measure ROI. There are coupon codes that you can do with specific print ads. I mean, there's so many ways if you really, really want to figure out what works best for you and your customers. So just take some time and invest time and effort to figure that out.
Exactly what Khurram said, but I'll take a moment just before that and say it's about managing moments of truth. Moments of truth is where your customer is engaging with your product or service and realizing, are you good or bad? So it could be online, it could be digital, it could be offline, it could be email, it could be anything. If you are if you're not thinking about all these moments of truth, and if you're not managing them, the customer loyalty, I think we heard it from a previous speaker, your brand loyalty is gone with the new millennials coming in. And if you're not managing that, you're not creating value for clients and your business will decline.
Well, we touched a lot about digital marketing as well. There's a question about why we are not developing apps for Sigiriya. So if you look at the digital space, it won't stop from digital marketing. It's actually the entire customer journey. So where you actually map the customer journey and how you try to enhance the customer experience by inserting digital technologies. If you look at companion apps for, or travel apps, it's basically where once the traveler comes to the country, how they experience the country. So, so you can actually, and also there's a lot of free tools where you can listen to customers like keywords and find out, rather than market research, market reality. So looking at those tools, you'll be able to find out what people are looking for and how to basically reconfigure your products, Google Trends, and your own analytics platforms. So therefore, thereby you will be able to easily identify where the gaps are. And also if you look at in terms of travel industry, consumer advocacy, after experiencing a product or a service like TripAdvisor, where you can see the service gaps and you can see how better you could actually listen to your customers and enhance your product. So it won't only stop from digital marketing, but there are so many other angles you have to look into. And also if you look at Southwest Airlines using Twitter to give customer service, and if you take Turkish Airlines using safety video as a marketing tool and to set the agenda for the airline. So there are a lot of examples like that. So, so there is a lot of potential in investing in digital technologies.
Thank you, Dan.
So we spent a lot of time talking about customer acquisition. I want to take it back and to talk about improving the consumer experience, whether it's online or offline. We also talked about kind of what are the tools for measuring success in that consumer experience. And you can pull in a ton of data and gain some insights from that. But ultimately, when we talk about improving the customer experience, it's about solving pain points, right? And a lot of the great companies that we've been talking about today were formed from the germ of the idea was a very simple pain point that somebody was trying to solve. So if you look at a company like Uber, the concept wasn't let's build an app so that other people that have excess capacity in their cars, I can see them on this little app and tell them to come pick me up and pay them for it. It was the founder lived in San Francisco, and before Uber, getting a cab in San Francisco was incredibly difficult, and your success of getting one within half an hour was about the probability of a US cricket team beating the Sri Lankan national team. All right, I shoehorned a cricket joke in. But ultimately, you know, the germ of that idea was solving a pain point. And a lot of times I think the best way to start trying to find those pain points is really just going out and observing in the real world. And I bet if you go upstairs to the lobby or go outside on the street and walk down any of these streets, sit in a restaurant, sit in a retail location, go over to the Crestcat Mall, and pay attention, you'll see those pain points. They're everywhere, they're all around us, and it's really taking the time to see what that is and then start to chart your progress towards a solution, a product, and a company.
Thank you, Jim. So I think, just to wrap things up here, if digital is not part of your strategy, very soon your clients will slowly disappear and you become extinct. So make sure that digital is very much core in anyone's strategy now going forward, whether you're a startup or a growth or a large company. And we've heard from our panel some very clear directions as to the way to move forward with enhancing that customer experience and retaining that customer. with a great ROI. Much, guys.
Number one is you may lose a hair, it doesn't mean that you will be lost in the digital world. So I'll soon join, Ramesh, in a couple of years, I'm getting there. Before I thank our wonderful panel of speakers, I would like to invite my friend Rasika from LeapSet. He will explain to you why those Lego sets are over there. Rasika?
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The theme of this conference is disruption. So in keeping with that theme and the spirit of the conference, and also partly to rouse you from the afternoon slumber, we have come up with a little game. So if you take a look at the center of the table, you'll find the Lego. What we would like you to do is break it apart and build something completely new with it. Right? So it can be a car or a bus or an aeroplane, whatever. Try to be creative, because Udayana says that's important. Lakshman also says that we need to time box it, because we need to put you under some pressure. So you have about 10 minutes. That's as long as the tea break will last for. And members from the LeapSet marketing team and judge your designs, and we will award prizes for the 3 best designs. The 3 tables that produce the best and most creative design will win prizes. All members around the table to prizes as well. So please take a stab at it.
Very well calculated how digital can be leveraged, the technology can be leveraged to re-energize and build a traditional, physical business. I think there's a significant learning. And what I also like about Ramesh's presentation is that digital doesn't mean that doing mad things. Digital doesn't mean that you having a Facebook likes, collecting Facebook likes, or Instagram accounts, etc. Digital is in fact a disciplined approach that he elaborated on that, how in a very disciplined manner Cinnamon went about building digital marketing capabilities. So thank you so much for that presentation. Shant, on the other hand, brought us, how WOW has evolved over a period of time, and where is how the most important aspect of digital marketing, that you can target each customer depending on where in the sales funnel that customer is. And thank you so much, Karam, joining us. Especially he had to shuffle his schedule to be with us. We greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much, Rohan, Udada, Jim, and Manju. Please put your hands together and thank our wonderful panel of speakers. So we will commence at 4 o'clock, the final session. Thank you.
While you've been busy running your restaurant, technology's been changing fast. Your customers are online, mobile, and social, and they expect you to be too. But your cash register or standard POS system hasn't kept up with these changes and doesn't connect you to these customers. That's why we created LeapSet, a local commerce platform that'll change the way you run your business. In the same way the smartphone transformed the telephone, LeapSet is a giant step forward for the cash register and POS. Let's talk about how LeapSet drives sales. Just like the smartphone, LeapSet is preloaded with apps apps that increase sales by allowing customers to place orders right from their smartphones, and a rewards program that transforms occasional purchasers to loyal customers. LeapSet also provides more control of your business through real-time reports on your sales, staff, and customers. You can view them from any web-connected device, anytime, anywhere. And that's just the beginning. LeapSet is an open platform, which means a lot of smart companies are developing even more apps to help your business. LeapSet saves you money too. Instead of thousands up front for a traditional POS system, LeapSet is available for a low monthly fee. There's no hidden cost and no long-term contract. Let's work together to make your restaurant a success in the digital age. We're committed to it because we grow when you grow.
Find your nearest Sampath Bank wherever you are. Don't miss out on our credit card promos and other great deals.